Our next topic is called Solving Systems by Elimination, and this should be review. This is one of my favorite ways to solve for systems, and they're really nice sometimes when they just automatically cancel. And what do I mean cancel? Well, in a problem like this, what you want to do is you want to add straight down. So you want to add an x plus a negative x, and those are going to cancel. Then you're going to add straight down again. What's y plus a 3y? Well, that's 4y. And what's a 12 plus a negative 8? Well, that's just going to be 12 minus 8, which is 4. All right, now what we can do is divide by 4 to solve for y, and we get y equals 1. Now, unfortunately, the next step is a little bit more tedious than it was for the substitution step. But what we're going to have to do is essentially substitute, where I take that y equals 1, and I can use the bottom equation or the top equation. It doesn't matter, but I like to choose the one that has more positives in it. So for example, I'm going to take this and I'm going to put a 1 in there. So I'll have x plus 1 equals 12. So I've basically replaced this with a 1. X plus 1 equals 12. Subtract 1 from both sides, and we get x equals 11. And we're done. So our answer is the coordinate 11, 1. Okay, we're going to make this just a little bit harder. Let's go ahead and let's add these straight down. A 5x plus a negative 2x is a 3x. A negative 4y plus a 4y, well, those cancel. And a negative 21 plus an 18, that gives me negative 3. So I get 3x equals negative 3, and I need to divide by 3 now, and I get x equals minus 1. All right, at this point we need to plug into a problem, and I don't really see anything that's maybe better than the other one. I think I'm going to plug into the bottom one. It only has 1 negative compared to 2 positives. So I'm going to rewrite this with a negative 1 here, because x is negative 1. So I get negative 2 times negative 1 plus 4y equals 18. So that gives me 2 plus 4y equals 18. Subtract 2 from both sides, and I get 4y equals 16. Divide by 4. 4's cancel, and I'm left with y equals 4. So that's my final answer. And again, if you want, you can write it as a coordinate as negative 1, 4. There we go. Okay, now we're getting a bit harder. If you were to just flat out add these, we don't get anything that cancels. We'd get a 2x plus an 8y equals 36. And that's a problem because we just haven't helped ourselves by eliminating a variable. So in a situation like this, we really want to try to change one equation so that things will cancel. So what I recommend is multiplying this whole thing by negative 1. And when I do that, I would be distributing the negative, and I would be left with a negative x minus 7y equals minus 6. And so I've just changed this equation to be this one here. And I'm just going to now take this first equation and rewrite it as x plus y equals 30. All right, now let's go ahead and now let's see if we add things if it's good. Well, what's x plus a negative x? Well, that disappears. Yay. Negative 7y plus y is a negative 6y. And 30 plus a negative 6, that is 24. Divide by negative 6, and we get y equals a negative 4. Sweet. We're not done yet. We have to go back, and this is kind of an interesting point here. You have to now plug that y value into one of your equations. You could plug it into here, here, or the equation that you manipulated, that one there. I think in this case, I'm going to plug it into the first one because it's the easiest numbers. So I'll have x plus a negative 4, because my y is negative 4, equals 30. So that will be x plus a negative 4 equals 30. I'll be adding 4 to both sides. The 4's cancel. X equals 34. All right, at this point we have a harder problem than the last. We can't just multiply by a negative to get rid of something. So you kind of have to think, all right, what could I multiply by to have a cancel? Well, I've got a 2x here, and I would want a negative 2x here, which would mean that I would want to multiply that whole top equation by negative 2. You could also say, hey, if I have a 3y here, I want a minus 3y here, so you can multiply that whole top by negative 3. Honestly, either works, but let's go ahead and let's try to get a cancel with the x. So I'm going to multiply everything here by negative 2. And don't forget your parentheses. All right, so what does that become? Well, that becomes a negative 2x minus a 2y equals negative 8. So that was this, and now I'm going to rewrite this right below it as a 2x plus 3y equals 9. All right, now we can go ahead and add. So these cancel. A negative 2y plus 3y gives me a positive 1y, and then I get 1. Well, that was nice and friendly, wasn't it? All right, now I'm going to go ahead and plug back in, and again, I really like the top equation here. That's pretty simple. So I'm going to put my y in as 1. So that's going to be a 1. So I'm going to have x plus 1 equals 4. Subtract 1, and I get x equals 3. Bravo. Now we're going to talk about a much harder one, and this is when you actually have to multiply both equations. This is definitely a harder one. In a case like this, it's not very clear. Can I multiply this by something to get to 10? No. Can I multiply this by something? No. What you're going to end up doing is multiplying by the value above it, essentially. So what I mean by that is I'm going to try to get these to be a negative 40 and a positive 40. And it's just a little trick to say something like, oh, why don't I take this thing right here and multiply it by that? So I'm actually going to take negative 10 and multiply it by everything that I see here. And then we'll assess if that works or not. All right, so what does that give us? That gives us a positive 40x, and then a positive 20y equals negative 140. All right, now let's go ahead and let's assess what we want to multiply the bottom by. Well, I need this to be a negative 40x, so that means I would have to multiply this by 4, which would be the same thing as this, but obviously you're making it a positive 4. So I'm multiplying everything by 4 here. That's going to give me a negative 40x plus a 28y, and that's going to be equal to negative 100. So what makes this problem harder? Well, it's the fact that we have to multiply both the top equation and the bottom equation. And again, my hint is just multiply this top one by this number, and then you're going to have to multiply the bottom equation by something like this, either the positive or the negative of that. All right, let's add down. So 40x plus a negative 40x disappears, and I'm left with a 48y. And this is going to give me a negative 240. Now a negative 240 divided by 48. How lovely. It gives me a y equals negative 5. All right. I'm going to take that y equals negative 5 and I'm going to plug it into the top equation. So that'll give me a negative 4x minus 2 times negative 5 equals 14. So I get a negative 4x plus 10 equals 14. Subtract 10. Negative 4x equals 4. Divide by negative 4, and we get an x equals negative 1. Again, you can write it as a coordinate if your heart desires that. All right, you go ahead and stop this video if you'd like, but if you want to see me do another harder elimination problem, just kind of hang on the line. All right, here's another example where you can't just multiply one equation by something. You'd have to do both. So in this case, I'm going to multiply this by a negative 4, or you could say a 4, doesn't matter, but let's try negative 4. So that's going to give me a 28x, and then that's going to give me a 32y, and then I get a negative 36. Okay, well, what am I going to have to multiply the bottom by? I want this to be a negative 28x, so I'm just going to multiply the bottom one by 7. And that 7 came from knowing this number here. All right, so 7 times a negative 4x is a negative 28x. 7 times a 9y is a 63y. And a 7 times 22, or a negative 22, is negative 154. All right, adding down, this disappears. A 32y plus a 63y gives me 95y. And I'm going to add these two things, a negative 36 plus a negative 154 gives me negative 190. Divide by 95. Dividing by 95, I get negative 2. All right, next thing I'm going to do is just plug into one of these equations. I think I'm going to choose the top one, although you can never choose wrong. I like to choose the easiest one. Oops. That's going to go into the y. So I have a negative 7x minus 8 times negative 2 equals 9. This gives me a minus 7x plus 16 equals 9. Subtract 16. 9 minus 16 is negative 7, so I get that disappears, and a negative 7x equals a negative 7. Divide by negative 7 on both sides, that disappears, and I am left with x equals 1. That works as an answer, or you could write it as a coordinate as 1, negative 2. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I hope you have a fabulous day, and good luck on that homework.